Hi everyone, this is Rachel at StudioUs with another at-home drawing lesson for you guys. We're continuing our May the 4th week with an awesome drawing of Rey from Star Wars. So go ahead and grab your supplies and we'll get started. To start things off, you'll need a drawing pencil, a Sharpie marker, and a large eraser. So I'm going to visualize my horizontal and vertical centers, and then using that, mark out my top, bottom, and sides for the head, looking at how close it comes to the top, how far down to the bottom it goes, and making sure I tip it over so we get that point leaning toward the left side. Next, we're going to sketch in the body. I'm looking at how close it comes to the chin. So it's about the same height as the chin, but over to the left a little more. The right side should line up about with the side of the head on the right side. And then bringing it down to narrow down as her chest works down toward her waist. And then draw it in. After that, we can sketch in the lines for her neck. And go ahead and draw on those arms coming down from either shoulder. I'm just dotting out where I see the line going, how close it gets to the edge, and then drawing it in. Same with the other side. Alright, we've got another set of arms. So looking at where the elbow connects down, how high up that goes, it's just a little shorter than the shoulder. And then drawing it in. Same thing with the other forearm. I'm going to mark where it starts, where it ends, and then sketch it in. So we're adding in the shapes for her hands. Again, mark out where it starts, where it ends, and how high up it goes. And look for any curves in the shape. You can also get the ear in, so it's an extension of the neck coming up and then curving around with the back of her head. And we're going to get the outside edge of her face details. So starting with the brow bone, a little bit of the eye, some cheeks, some nose, and then down to the lips. And make sure you leave room at the bottom for her chin and at the top for her forehead. A little bit of erasing in the head and arms to get everything set up for our next drawing steps. Be really careful to clear out all your lines and do any touch-ups if you erased any lines that need to stay. Go ahead and draw back over those so we have a clear outline of where we want our drawing to be. Next, we're adding in the fingers. I always like to start with the finger that's closest to me visually. So if I'm looking at the hand, the pinky finger is closest, and then I can build up the other fingers on top of that to fill in the rest of the hand. I'm using that body edge to tell me how far out those fingers should go. And same with the top hand, I'm using the edge of the shoulder to serve as a guide for how long that pinky finger should be. Get that one in first, and then I can build the rest off of that. And this top hand is a little bit closer to us visually, so it's going to be a little bit bigger, and those fingers will be a little thicker. Alright, so we're getting the next bend in the finger. And these are just little lines coming down and connecting to make it look like the fingers are curving in and wrapping around. A couple little lines for the knuckles as well. And we've got a little bit of erasing to do to clear all those lines in the fingers out. And look carefully at where things overlap. So on that first line of the finger, we've got a little bit of that line sticking out going into the next segment. Touch up any lines that got erased. And now we can add in her staff. This one's a little tricky. It's hard to get the angle just right unless the hands are lined up perfectly. So if you notice at the top, that one, the top edge of the staff is going all the way on the top side of the paper. On mine, my hands are a little bit farther apart. So I'm going to let the staff angle up a little bit more sharply to the right, and it'll hit right at the corner of the paper, which is totally fine. Remember, we're humans, not photocopiers, so a little bit of difference in each picture is not a problem at all. Next, we're adding in the details on the staff, so I'm getting the curves, drawing the little narrow lines between them, and then curving it around to make that shape three-dimensional. So a little curve. Lines coming down, curve at the bottom, and then wrap it around to make it 3D. Wherever we've got it narrowing, we can erase the sides of the staff to get all those little details in there. That looks like something super tricky to draw, but it's actually pretty easy. Alright, we've got our staff in, got a little bump on the hair, and we're going to start working on the eyebrows. So finding where we put that brow bone when we drew her face in, we're going to curve that around to get the first eyebrow, and then we can use that to align the second eyebrow, which is a little trickier and much bigger because it's closer to us if we're looking at her face. I'm just mapping out where the tip of that eyebrow should be in relation to her ear, and then sketching it in. Next, we're going to start setting up her robe. So curving lines down from the neck. We can get some of these texture bumps up on her shoulder and set up the wrap on her chest. These just pull down a little bit into her shoulder so it looks like the wrinkles are coming down and kind of wrapping around her body. There we go. Next we've got the face. So I'm going to start with that big eye. It's pretty tricky. Set up our little side eye first, then using that as a guide, start looking at the shape. So that's looking pretty close, but a little too big. So we're going to narrow it down. It's still looking a little bit wonky, so we'll move it forward just a little bit. Take your time with the eyes. It's really hard to get these, especially since her head is turned. And try to use the eyebrow to help orient yourself. Next we'll get in the lips. Got a little bump at the front and then curving around. We also got her nostrils in there. Gonna move that eye forward just a little bit more. Alright, we've got more details on the eyes, so we've got eyelashes going around the outside of the eye. Draw the little shine in the eye, and then the curve for her pupil. You can also get the armbands on her shirt, and the crossover for the wrap. and the neckline for her undershirt. A little bit of erasing for those lines that go through the wrinkles on her shirt, so we'll clear those out. And we're going to add in the hair. So working in from the outside edge of her head, we're just going to get these curvy lines coming around her scalp, working back toward the back of her head, and then wrapping around down to her ear. Next, we've got a little wave of a curl coming down in front of her ear. A little curl under her chin for the other side and some details in the ears. We can add in her signature buns and start getting some of that texture on the wrap on her shirt. Moving on, we'll get the texture on the other parts of the shirt wrap as well. Make sure we've got them on both sides. These are a little longer because they're looking bigger. And finally, we've got the lines on her hair, just to give it a little more texture. And the lines on her arm wraps. And these all curve just a little bit to make them look like they're wrapping around her arm, which is kind of a round cylinder shape, so they should have a little curve to them. No one's arms are flat, right? All right, that's looking great. We're ready for Sharpie. Go ahead and go over all of your lines. Really take your time and be careful. We're going to speed this up because there are so many lines to go over. But make sure you're staying right on your pencil lines, get everything right where you want it. All right, once we're all done with the Sharpie lines, grab your eraser, go over everything, clear off all that pencil. Make sure you go over everything. You might have some pencil smudges, and then we'll start coloring. So I'm going to start with a purple, and where I have these purple stripes in the sky, I'm going to give myself a little guideline to help me spot where I want the purple to go. And then very lightly, I'm going to fill in the edges to kind of blend into that blue. And once I've gone over all my edges and kind of softly filled them in, I can go with more pressure in the center and build up more of that purple. So we'll fill all of that in. Alright, now that we're finished up with the purple, I'm going to take a dark blue and start by lightly blending it into the light purple areas. So you can see I'm working over where we made that purple a little lighter on the edges, and just putting on a light coat of blue as well. Once I've got all of the edges blended in, I'm going to go for the remaining white areas that should be darker blue and color those in darker. With our blues finished up, we can go ahead and start working on the skin tone. I'm going to take a peach color and, leaving out all of the lightest highlights on her skin, color the rest in light peach. Just look for all those little highlights along the edge of her arm, on her neck, and on her face. Leave those white, color in the rest that nice light peach color. Finishing up the last little bit of the hand with the peach. We'll go ahead and work on some of the shadows on her skin tone. So using a tan, I'm going to line out where I want my shadow to start on her arm, and then once I've got it filled in, I'm going to lightly blend it out into the peach by using a little bit less pressure. Go ahead, look for all the shadows on her face, neck, and arms, fill those in. Be especially careful around the fingers, and then we'll move on to the next step. Moving on from the skin tone, we're going to start working on her staff. So I'm taking a gray, leaving out the highlight area, coloring in the rest fairly dark gray, and then I just give the slightest little light highlight for the white area that I left out to make it a very pale gray. Go ahead and work your way all the way down that staff, filling in the dark gray areas and then very lightly on the highlight. Once we're done with the gray, we can add the shadow on her staff using a black and just coloring very lightly. And it's kind of the same process we did with the skin tone. I'm going to fill in my dark shadow and then blend it lightly into the gray and get all those little shadow areas working our way down. Go ahead and get the black in the eyelashes and on her eye as well. Now I'm going to take that same tan we used to do the shadows on her skin, and very, very lightly I'm going to color in just the lightest coat of tan on the darker parts of her shirt. So that little undershirt that we're seeing underneath the wrap, we're going to color in very lightly tan, and I'm going to leave out the lightest highlight. So you can see I'm leaving a little white edge just where we have the brightest highlight. Following that, I'm going to take gray and very, very lightly color over the whole thing. So going over the highlight and the tan area, we'll still be able to see the highlight. It'll show up a little lighter, and this will kind of mute out the brown and give us that nice kind of grayish tan color on her tunic. Wherever I have a shadow, I can use a little extra pressure and create more of a shadow tone with that gray. Next, we'll move on to her wrap and her armbands. I'm using the same gray and just very, very, very lightly coloring in the armbands and the wrap. And I'm careful to leave out any highlights I see on the edge of her arms or any highlights on the little wrinkles in her wrap. Once we've got that all filled in, we can use the same gray, and again using a little bit more pressure, build it up to create those shadows along the bottoms of any wrinkles or on the shadow parts of her arms. Alright, shadows on the arms are looking good. We're going to take a tan color again and get just the very highlights on her hair. So looking at the light edges, wherever it's a little bit of a lighter brown, using pretty heavy pressure at this point to build up those lighter highlights. We still want it to be kind of dark because her hair is a lot darker than the rest of the colors on our picture. But we want it to be lighter than the other browns we're going to layer on there in a minute. I'm getting little highlights on all those little hair texture lines in her buns. After that, I'm going to take a brown, color in her eyebrows. We can get the brown parts on her eyes, and we'll color in the rest of her hair. Alright, time for shadows on the hair. We'll take a dark brown, and wherever we see a little bit of a darker tone on her hair, usually on the opposite side of the chunk from the highlight, we'll color in those shadows. Alright, just finishing up the last few shadows on the hair. We're going to take a red or a mahogany color, any kind of deep red you've got, fill in the lips, and then put a little tan over it. And that'll do it for our picture of Rey. Hope you guys had a great time and your picture turned out awesome. See you for the next one, and may the 4th be with you.